Hi, today we start a new chapter in Practical Avodas Midos. The new series, which we're going to be starting, is going to be completely in the group. It's not going to be attached to a shir. There's certain advantages to that. It's not going to have the limitations of a shir. It'll make things even and to a certain extent equivalent for people who are on the group who are here in person, for people who would like to be on the group but can't be here in person. It allows things to come back out at a more sporadic pace, and even when something doesn't work out to be able to give it in person, the Practical Avodas Midos is able to continue. And I'm excited about trying this new format. It really is going to allow me to add different type of material, and I'm really excited. It also allows a certain reset and to start and establish certain foundations because people have joined at different points. And what I like to do, based on the Yesod of Rav Yisrael Salanter at the beginning of Igeres HaMusar, is really to try to organize things into certain klalim. Okay, not that there's any sort of absolute classification or there's any clear delineation, but for me, in my avodah, the way I see it is when I talk about avodas hamidos, I talk about 5 different type of skills, and the combination of which really covers the base of the avodah of all midos. Now, I'm not going to say that there's a hard line and clear distinction between all these categories. Each of the categories is going to affect each other on the one hand. On the other hand, there is certain distinctions between these 5 which allow us to work on these skills or categories independently. And different midos are going, while centered in one of these 5 areas, okay, is certainly going to have, every midah is going to have a number of elements to it. Okay, so I'd like to start off right now, really introducing the 5 areas, and over the course of the next few practical avodas midos, I'm going to walk into each of these categories and flesh it out a little. Now, I'm going to try to bring below a list of midos to make it more tangible. As I walk through each of these categories, and I give a list of midos to see how those tie in or are centered or focused on one of these categories, okay? So the 5 categories I'm going to place forward are going to be, the first one is going to be simat lev, attentiveness. Okay, this is going to be very broad in terms of really attentiveness to all those things that are outside of us. Okay, it's going to affect our listening. It's going to affect the things we notice. It's going to affect the things which we initiate. But it has to do with essentially our mindfulness, our das, in terms of those things happening outside of us. Okay, and we can look at the midos, which that obviously bumps into, and the skills which are required to develop specifically this koach of attentiveness. Okay, that's going to be the first category within this classification. Okay, the second category is going to be yitzarim. Okay, it's going to focus around the concept of things which are predicated on habit, and that we are drawn in certain ways, and how we interact, understand, play with, and are able to develop some degree of agency and self-control over those yitzarim, which we will describe, that process of yitzarim. And again, we'll bring down, these are examples of type of midos which are going to be centered around or focused on that specific area of avodah. The third is going to be something which I'm going to call identity, or the ani, okay? Understanding ourselves, our perception of ourselves in terms of others, our perception of ourselves in terms of the klal. This will obviously bump into midos like anava, like gaiva, like emes. There's going to be a whole litany of midos, which when we break it down, we'll see how it's going to be tied into that, and how there's a unique skill set or avodah involved in how we engender or develop that self-perception. That's going to be the third category. Okay? The fourth category is something which I like to call spiritual regulation. Okay? It's going to bump into areas like cheshbon nefesh. It's going to be how we relate to things differently. Okay, how we relate to either different type of avodas differently, how we respond in a healthy way two different type of situations. Obviously, perfectionism is going to bump into that, and judgmentalness is going to bump into that. And we'll talk about that when we talk about spiritual regulation and how we develop a healthy response system to things appropriately, to respond spiritually appropriately to things. And the fifth and last category is what we're going to be, which is going to have to do with if there's mindfulness towards the outside, has to do with mindfulness towards the inside. Understanding, being more in tune to our own das and our own seichel and our own dimyon. This is obviously going to affect areas like being engaged in things, like curiosity, like tefillah and emunah. How do we gain more of a skill set over midos and avodos, which touch in on where our mind goes? Okay, and the certain skill set and certain skills which we can develop specifically to focus on that. Now, obviously, many midos are going to bump into various parts and areas, but I think every midah does have a core starting point. Okay, and as we go through each of these subcategories, okay, we will talk them out. We'll talk over a certain type of avodas. Okay, not getting overly into detail in terms of specific avoda, because of the fact that then as we walk into midos, we can relate to the different type of avodas and where our starting point is. I'm really excited about this new project, and Be'ezrat Hashem, I hope to continue over the course of the next 2 weeks just to go into each of these categories more in detail and what the general type of avoda is involved in developing that type of skill set, and why I think that each of these categories really is distinct to a certain degree. Anyway, Batzlacha, I'm looking forward to working together.